What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about DLC for Gotham Knights and how I think the game is built for it. Now, we've had this discussion, and they've had this discussion leading into the game that this game was going to have no microtransactions, right? This game's like a standalone thing, but from the very beginning, it certainly seemed like this game was built to do more. And now sitting here, I have one main mission left, and that's it. I've beaten the entire game. I know some people are already on New Game Plus, but it couldn't be clearer to me that the game is built for DLC in mind. Now, whether it's free, whether you have to pay, whether they start locking costumes, outfits, that's all to be decided. And I guess that's some of the discussions we're going to have in this video. But I want to talk about how it's structured. That DLC just seems so apparent. Now, I still don't know about the playable character. Let me start there, because this was a thing leading into the game that we had discussions. We had multiple videos dating back years of, what other characters could they have that you could play as, like, when the game is over. Of course, there was, like, the Batman theory, but even moving on from that, there's, like, a Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain, and, like, all these things. Could you have these characters be playable? And I really think, like, is it still possible? Yes. I really think I've moved away from it, though. I do. Now, you could use Marvel's Avengers as a kind of comparison that, you had, like, a base game that had a group of characters that were all different, and then they did add more characters that you could play as, so it can be done. And I do think it can be done with Gotham Knights. The issue, of course, from I guess how I view it is, well, just the manpower that kind of stuff would take and how long that would take. And if you're going to introduce new playable characters, they gotta be unique. They gotta be different. They gotta have their own, specific move set. You're building a brand new character, okay? And one of this game's greatest strengths, easily, is the difference between the four. I made the rankings video. You can make a rankings, and then you can look online and find someone literally with the exact opposite rankings that says, how could you have thought this? Because I think this character is incredible. That's the game's strength. At the end of the day, that is this game's strength, because some people can just fall in love with one of them over the other, and vice versa if you're somebody else, and that's awesome. So to replicate that even more obviously becomes more and more challenging, right? Because you have to build the character out. You got to have all their abilities. The base character needs to be really good. So to be honest, I've kind of moved away from that. But I do think villains and factions are easily able to be added into this game. And that's because the entire combat system, when you go out into the open world, the entire system is based upon that. So you have the leaders of the factions, which are the side villain case files. They have their quests. And then they also have the factions that they run, which are the enemies, and there's the different variety of those enemies. That's basically the entire game, right? The Court of Owls have their group. There's a couple different variants of them. You can even go into when there's the random crimes that are happening in the world, there's always a faction assigned to it, right? The mob is doing this. Regulators are doing this. So all you have to do is add a new side villain. So say you add Hush. Then you add a faction that Hush identifies, or creates, and that faction is now built into the game where you have random crimes that are being committed with that faction leading. You obviously have to have at least, I'd say, 3 or 4 enemy types for that faction. And then you have, a mission quest line like you do for Harley, Clayface, Mr. Freeze with that new villain. It's 5, 6 levels, or missions we can call them. They do have recommended levels, let's say, for the character. Now, that's something they could add. They could easily add increased levels for your characters. Maybe they could add more abilities for the character as well. They could build in more abilities for Batgirl, Robin, etc., etc. That would be fine. Obviously, costumes or outfits would easily, be able to be added. The thing, of course, you just gotta watch out for is, I guess, paying for it. Now, is it so evil to pay for a gigantic, like a Season of Infamy kind of pack? Not necessarily, but we'll see how this game does it, because, again, you're going to have, do you have an extra villain or two being added? Do you have them being added monthly? Do you have them being added every 2 months? Do you have them as part of a package? How do you do it? And again, you go down the Marvel's Avengers thing where everything kind of starts out as being free, and then you quickly wind up into, oh, this thing's $10. All of a sudden these things are price gated, or whatever you want to call it. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do it. But with how the combat is, with how crimes happen, just literally second to second things when you're out into the open world, I cannot imagine that this game doesn't, or at least didn't have a plan for DLC. Now, I have seen people say, and look, I'm not here to say one side's right, one side's wrong. There's people that love the game, hate the game, all over the place. This game is split, not even down the middle. It's split in multiple directions. Do they have the opportunity to do DLC? Do we even want DLC? Those are definitely, questions for sure. I think they wanted DLC. Now, for whatever reason, they didn't talk about the DLC, or they haven't talked about it yet, but I do think they built this game, and as or maybe they didn't build it like this, but as the game kind of took shape, they said, yeah, this is pretty easy that you can add more stuff into the game. And even, like, for me, and I know other people as well, like, going into this game, we thought there'd be more side villains, right? I thought, in the way that they did Harley, Clayface, and Mr. Freeze, I thought there'd be like 6 of them when there's 3. So there was vastly less. Now, again, you can have the discussion if that's fine or if that was done badly or whatever. But I thought there'd be more. So obviously you could add more. I don't really think it would change all that much. It would enhance the experience, I suppose, right? But those are kind of the things I'd imagine getting. So you have the 4-player, wave-based thing. Well, number one, the game needs cross-play. Now, I don't know if that's that's really not DLC. That's some sort of patch you need to include in the game. Game needs that. Could you eventually down the line come up with something where you could play 4 players in the open world? I think it's possible. That would be really interesting. Again, not necessarily DLC, but just something you could add into the game. Maybe you can even call those like quality of life things. And then in terms of adding additional things, I think outfits, obviously. I think increasing the max level, which would then probably mean you have to add something else to the characters. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't increase the max level. But I think villains, creating a villain pack and having it be a 2-3 hour thing. You have a new faction which has 3, 4, 5 new enemies, in them. There are new variants to it, and then they're run by a leader, and that leader's doing things around Gotham. You have to do 6 quests with them. They take 2-3 hours each. I think having a couple of those villains would work. Now, one final thing I do want to say, and I've been very consistent with this, and I want to remain consistent on this. I don't need this game to last years. So, as I'm talking about all this stuff, if we could get this within the next 6 to 8 months, I'm cool with that, and then you can stop. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree. If you want this game to last 30 years or more, to not exaggerate. If you want this game around 1, 2, 3 years down the line, that's fine. I don't. I honestly don't care if it lasts 3 years. I don't really want it to. I'd prefer you give us the DLC, give us a couple more villains over the next 6 months. Plus, I do think Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is going to be an issue for this game. I think when that game comes out, that kind of takes everything away from this game. So I don't know if this game would succeed even if you're still adding things, but if you're adding things throughout when Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is out. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. But I do think, and that's something I haven't really seen people talk about, I feel like Suicide Squad could be the cutoff. Add the 4-player mode, give us a DLC or 2 with some villains, and if Suicide Squad comes out May, June, July, that's where Gotham Knights should probably end and get to work on whatever the next game that team is working on. And remember, WB Montreal has that second team already working on a game right now. So let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on. If you want to follow or support us anywhere else, we do have a Patreon. We have YouTube memberships. If you click the link in the description or the join button next to the subscribe button, that would help us out as well. Thank you for watching, guys, and I hope to see you all on the next one.